and welcome to another episode of Over Underrated. It's Fran here, and today we're discussing blues with our guest, podcaster, lecturer and writer Karlyn King. My co-host Babs, myself and Karlyn have been listening to two playlists, one from each act, and we'll be discussing if we think they are over or underrated. So please sit back and enjoy the podcast.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, what are we calling this podcast?
Was it over underrated?
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
Welcome to another episode of Over Underrated. It is I, Fran, and I'm here with my co-host Babs. Hello, Babs.
Hello, it is I, Babs. I feel very Shakespearean talking like that. How have you been, Fran?
I have been dandy. I've been eating a lot of grapes, and I've been playing computer games and sitting in my pants for the past 2 days, which is information I'm sure you don't want to hear about. And
I think we have listeners who want to hear that
really?
information.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
I see on Facebook you were playing a Poirot computer game?
Yeah, so I bought a pro computer game and then spent over 15 hours and cancelled plans to complete the game. I don't know why this happened to me.
I mean, he's Belgium's greatest detective, but is it worth it? I don't know. But did you listen to music in that time as well? What have you been listening to?
Have I listened to music? What have I been listening to? I have been listening to not a lot of music. I've been listening to music podcasts, which is, good research of this. But apart from that, I'm going to say the same as before. Spectre released another single, which I really liked. And Depeche Mode, for reasons, has clogged up my week. How about yourself, Babs?
I mean, Depeche Mode also clogged up my week. I wonder why. And I will mention again that I've been listening to Goose because yesterday I went to their gig at Ancienne Belgique, which was great. It was one of those gigs where I was a little bit scared when they played kind of 5 songs in a row, all from their new album. And I was like, this is all great, and they build and build. And then like the second they started playing the classics, just the place went absolutely crazy. They have this song called Sinrise, which I think we've talked about before, which is like this, almost instrumental song, but there's this humming. And 3 songs in, when there was the remotest bit of silence, people were like singing it to try and get them to do it. And then they played it and people were still singing it after the song had finished. So it was a really, really nice atmosphere. Nice to get all in the mosh pit. It was fairly tamed. It was mostly older people. Just a little celebratory circle. Yeah, it was really good.
The best gigs is when you leave and people are still singing in the choruses into the subway or wherever you are. Indeed. On the way home. Indeed. But we're not alone today. We have a guest
who has also been to a lot of gigs. She told us pre-record.
We have Karlyn King. Hello, Karlyn. How are you doing?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really good, thanks. I'm enjoying the Scottish sun.
Oh, really?
Really? It's snowing here in Brussels today. Very different.
That is so weird.
Yeah, it is. It's quite bizarre. Everyone's saying like snow on April Fool's Day, but of course.
Yeah,
it was. I was in Tenerife last week, and
oh wow!
So coming back and having snow in April, well, the last day of March is kind of crazy. So yeah, and I'm the kind of guy that once the heating's off, and I was pretending, but it isn't. Yeah, freezing cold.
But Karlyn, what music have you been listening to recently, and what gigs have you been to?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed seeing Idols back on the road. They played the Glasgow Barrowlands, and at one point they got everyone to sit down on the ground and separate into 2 crowds, and some guy started backflipping up and down the bit in the middle.
Did you all then do ups upside your head? Is that what happened?
Pretty much, yeah.
Perfect. The buttons.
And one of them just I always forget their names. One of the guitar players jumped into the crowd and just started singing random songs by Scottish acts. So there was a bit of Simple Minds, there was some Belle and Sebastian, Garbage. It was great.
Sounds great. I've never seen Idols live. I have to say, they're one of those bands that I've not made much of an effort to try and get into, but they're meant to be quite good live, right?
They're amazing. They've really like come into their own, I think, and they've been through a lot personally, and that really comes across in the live show.
And Karlyn has her own podcast, and wasn't Idols on your podcast recently?
Yeah, so Adam Devonshire, the bass player Dev, as he's known, and his cat were on my podcast. His cat is called Toulouse.
We're also a cat-friendly podcast, aren't we?
Yes, above my left shoulder, my cat. You might see my cat, Kim, named after Kim Gordon and Kim Deal. So
what a great
let's see if she
name.
makes an entrance. I think she's in a post-food coma at the moment, so likely won't. But,
There may be some more cat chats later on.
yes, absolutely. Spoiler alert.
So today we're chatting, as always, about two different acts. The first act we're going to be talking about is some would say maybe an overrated rock and roll blues band called the Rolling Stones. And the other act we'll be discussing later on, Karlyn, is
Memphis Minnie.
Memphis Minnie.
If you don't know who she is, you will by the end of this.
So we discuss the Rolling Stones first.
Let's get them out of the way. The little-known Rolling Stones.
Overrated.
I have made a playlist of 5 tracks which kind of represents the traditional Rolling Stones of the 1960s, the bluesy era maybe. And Babs, are you a fan, or have you seen them live or anything? Or
So I'm not a particular fan. I would definitely say that in my view they're overrated, but I haven't seen them live, and so many people say that they're absolutely amazing. My friend Tasha often travels to other countries to go and see them live, so I feel like to make a definitive decision I would need to do that. But yeah, I the songs that you picked particularly are broadly not my favourites. I think my favourite Rolling Stone song is Gimme Shelter by a wide margin, and I mean Mary Clayton's Story is amazing. And I recently saw a ballet which was kind of inspired by their music, so sometimes their music was played kind of as is, or sometimes it was covered. But given that blues is a genre also that I don't know particularly well, it's a genre that I know has inspired a lot of bands that I like, but I've never really gotten into it yet. It didn't really surprise me that this playlist, I wasn't a big fan of this playlist in all honesty in advance, but I'm looking forward to discussing.
well, yeah, I mean, my favourite song is She's a Rainbow. Again, it's more psychedelic than anything bluesy, but because we're kind of doing a Bloom themed episode, I kind of stepped in that direction. Karlyn, have you seen the Stones? Are you a fan?
So I've never seen them live, and yeah, much like Babs, I've heard a lot of people say they're incredible. They're headlining British Summertime this year again in Hyde Park. So they've done it before, and then now they're doing it again, and I can't help but feel like someone else should really be given the mantle there. And I kind of feel the same on the playlist. I mean, one thing I will say is I don't hate them, but when those songs come on when you're like in a pub or whatever, they are great songs, but what I kind of take issue with is that how much they took from other artists, and that these artists were sort of erased from rock and roll history. So that's my biggest bugbear with them.
I have seen them live in 2007, and it was interesting to see how mature they looked. So I'm surprised 15 years later that they're still going. And also, when Charlie passed away, you think surely that would be a time to move on. Like, I just don't know why they need to keep playing. Like, they can at one point retire, maybe slightly. But yeah, when I saw them live, it's exciting to hear these songs you've been listening to on the radio for the past 30, 40 years. It's nice to see Mick Jagger shake himself on stage. But they did play a lot of the new album, and it did feel like people were looking at their watch and the phone throughout the gig. And then, suddenly they play a song from the 60s again, and it's like, here we go. But I don't own any Rolling Stones. I've got like that 50 licks.
40 licks, yeah.
40 licks, sorry.
You added 10.
I've got the deluxe version. And
got some B-sides, yeah.
But yeah, I'm not like a completist at all. So making this playlist, like I said, I knew we're doing a blues theme, so I thought, let's think of some bluesy bangers by the Stones and discuss those. So, shall we get into the playlist?
Let's do it. What's your first pick?
So, my first pick, Brown Sugar. I didn't even realise it was controversial because, Karlyn, to let you know, me and Babs hardly listen to lyrics.
Oh, okay.
So,
Revelations today.
I didn't really know what the song was about until today. I was like, oh, wow. I always thought the song was about heroin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I believe it's about a young woman of colour. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's the backing singer Claudia Lanier.
Or it could be about Marsha Hunt. That was what Wikipedia says, because Marsha Hunt said it was about her, and then Claudia Lanier said it was about her, and Bill Wyman apparently said in his book that it was Claudia Lanier. So, yeah, controversy.
Yeah, and the lyrics, mentions the slave trade and lots of other fun parts. And I didn't even realise that now the Stones have now refused to play it. I think like a few years ago they pulled it from the set list because of those reasons. So it's interesting because obviously I don't think that Mick Jagger is pro slave trading or anything. But lyrics aside, for me, it has that guitar riff we all know, and apart from that, it does nothing for me. I just find it a bit bland Stones. Babs?
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't do much for me at all. And it just astounds me, with some of the songs on your playlist, the accolades that they have. So Rolling Stone ranked it 495 on the 500 greatest songs of all time, and at number 5 on the list of 100 greatest guitar songs of all time. What?
I think it was their last number 1 single in the UK as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. Didn't know that. Not Angie. What a shame. I quite like that song, actually. But yeah, it's just, I don't think the guitar riff is that good. Like, it's fine. I think like Karlyn was saying, like, I don't hate the Stones, but I'm just like, yeah, it's okay. And I guess I haven't been to enough events where this song might tie into my memory. I don't know. I haven't heard it at that many weddings or something like that. And yeah, the lyrics, I think, I remember broadly hearing of like, oh, is it about heroin or is it about a woman? But then you go and read them and you're like, oh my God, why the hell is he mentioning the slave trade when he's talking about having sex with a black woman? This is awful. And yeah, I mean, it's that thing of like, probably at the time it was like, oh, it's quite, good that, a white guy is singing about having sex with a black woman, but it's like, yeah, but he's really, not doing it in the best way and really fetishizing her, and there are better ways to do this. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not dated well at all. Yeah, he's fetishizing a young black woman, and the line is like a young girl should and stuff like that. I mean, it's really not good. It's funny because like when you listen to it, it's I was listening to like the remastered version, and it sounds massive. It sounds so well produced, and if it came on in at a party or whatever, you'd be like, yeah, this is cool. But it's that kind of bland cool. It's that like a lot of cultural theorists would say, it's just kind of distraction. It's kind of going to keep you compliant. It doesn't really register on a deeper level, and yeah, the lyrics are pretty scummy. Let's be honest.
What I found interesting, apparently Mick Jagger wrote this completely by himself. Even that guitar riff was a Mick Jagger, and I didn't realise he was that. I always assumed that Keith did the music and Mick did the lyrics, but apparently he completely wrote the whole thing himself, and then Keith just arranged it afterwards, which I was kind of shocked by. But moving on to
another song that perhaps hasn't aged well.
Honky Tonk Women. I personally have always hated this song. I mean, I love a cowbell. Any song that starts with a bell is also up there. But yeah, it's got flashes of guitar, and I can't hear any bass at all listening back to this. Although I'm listening to on Spotify the mono version, so maybe it doesn't help. But yeah, I just think it needs more piano and less sax. Not a big fan of sax, unfortunately.
Definitely less sax.
Yeah, again, this is about him going around shagging. Is that basically?
Yeah, so because I was like, okay, this is almost the opposite to Brown Sugar, because this is almost a song about women forcing themselves on him. Like the lyrics literally are, I laid a divorcee in New York City, I had to put up some kind of fight. So a honky tonk woman is apparently a dancing girl in a Western bar who may work as a sex worker. And talking about this ballroom queen in Memphis, she tried to take me upstairs for a ride. She had to heave me right across her shoulder. Okay. I'm surprised that you hate this more, Fran. I prefer this to Brown Sugar. Although I think I didn't like the horns in either. And knowing what I know now about you and horns, I'm surprised that you don't like them either. Karlyn, how do you feel about this song and horns in general?
Horns and rock, on board?
No one's ever asked me that. Horns belong in Motown is what I would say.
Yeah, horns and Motown. Yeah, I'm all with.
Yeah. It's this kind of honky tonk bar brothel type situation. Again, I just find it really bland.
Do you know WWF wrestling, the honky tonk man?
Oh yeah.
So what's that mean? Is he like a sex guy or what? I thought he's into.
I'm googling this immediately.
It's like an Elvis
WWE.
looking like, and he's called the honky tonk man.
Okay, I've just looked him up. I mean, that's quite a striking look.
Well, we move on to Time Is On My Side, which I think was their first US top 10, and I didn't know this was a cover until today.
Yay.
Because when the Stones started out, they were doing a lot of traditional blues and jazz numbers, and when they first came to America, they were known for being more of a sit down and sing the ballads kind of band like the Westlife. And it wasn't until later on when they got sexy and rockier. To me, it's far too repetitive. I'm not a fan of many of the slower ones, apart from maybe Angie, like yourself, Babs. But yeah, it's not for me. And we're mentioning later on that they stole from America, and a lot of Americans, the first time they heard a song was some guys from England singing in American accents.
Yeah.
Babs, have you heard this song before?
Yeah, no, I hadn't heard this song before, and I found it dull. I think the only bit I like, there's like a bit of a solo going on, but I found it really boring. It's just like I said, blues is not a genre that I am automatically enamored with, and I was like, yeah, this is really like the kind of stuff I don't like.
Yeah, I agree. It's super bland. I guess it's of its time, but yeah, I just hate that, everything they did, they stole, basically. In the words of Mos Def, who called that out. He said, yeah, Elvis ain't rock and roll, Little Richard is the king, so this is probably the most bland one on the playlist, yeah.
Yeah,
and
I'd
then
agree.
To a little less bland, we have Can't Get No Satisfaction.
Yeah.
Which is when they've moved away a little bit from blues. This is when they started to create more of what I would think the Stone sound is. And I think before this they were like less popular than Herman and the Hermits, and this literally turned them from being just another 60s band to being like the behemoth band, the Rolling Stones. But I think apparently they have stolen some from a song called 30 Days by Chuck Berry, I believe. So yeah, and it was a folk song, and then the producer gave Keith a fuzzbox and he plugged it in, and then they completely changed the song. They had to bury the vocal because they thought it'd be too sexy to be played on the radio. And it's all about Jagger's delivery. I shake myself to this if it's played, and I even enjoy the Devo cover. Has anybody heard the Devo version?
I have not. No. What's it like?
Well, it's very much Devo. They managed to get the classic guitar riff, then completely cut it up, and it sounds very different with like a robot beat to it. So the first time you hear it, it's like, what the fuck is this? And then by the fourth time, you absolutely love it.
I really like this song. This is definitely one of my favourite Stones songs, and I was glad it came on. I was like, finally. I love the bass. Like you were saying in Honking Tonk Woman, you can hear the bass. Like obviously the hook is good, but the bass, the dun 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 dun, 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 like it's really enjoyable. You can imagine that. Yeah, it's from '65. I had no idea it was that old actually. To be singing about that in that time, I'm sure many people were impressed. But again, the accolades. So it's 31 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Songs of All Time. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1998, and it is the 10th ranked song on critics' all-time lists according to Acclaimed Music. I mean, It's good, but it's not that good, is it?
It's definitely a bop in terms of like this list, and that like that guitar tone and that line is great. But I much prefer like Paint It Black or She's a Rainbow.
Yeah. And then the next track and final track is kind of like the cousin to Can't Get No Satisfaction. We have Jumping Jack Flash, when I believe they went down a psychedelic route, which kind of alienated them a little bit, and they kind of wanted another hit. So they went back to the previous format. And apparently Keith said that if you reverse the guitar riff of Can't Get Satisfaction, it basically is this. It's just to just span it round.
Oh my God.
and created a new track. And I'm sad to say this, but I'm going to say it. The first time I heard this song was in the film of the same name, starring Whoopi Goldberg.
What? I've never even heard of that.
The film Jumping Jack Flash. No?
No, what's it about?
She's a spy, and then using the lyrics of the song, she has to solve the mystery. I'm not joking, it's a real thing.
This is
I had never ever heard the song in my life until I saw the Whoopi Goldberg film. I think because I was a fan of Ghosts, I wanted to discover some more Whoopi.
I'm googling the film immediately. It kind of sounds
Jumping
amazing.
Jack Flash, by the way, is Keith's gardener. He's called Jack, and he'd jump around, so that's where they got the name from. But I think it's a little bit more funky than Can't Get No Satisfaction. So yeah, for me, this is the best song on the playlist, and I will always, if it's on, I will leave it on because it's a great classic track. Kind of just ripping off blues as much as the other songs, was just going to a new direction for the Stones, or.
I would say it's a little bit of both. I always find them derivative. Yeah, they don't really deviate from that kind of 12-bar blues, you know. And I just think they're interesting because they never once said, you know, we invented rock and roll, or you know, that they were friends with like Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and stuff like that. But they never quite acknowledged their own kind of privilege, in the sense that in the 60s, as five white guys from England, that they were able to become these huge megastars.
Apparently in 65 they refused to do a US tour unless they could have a Howling Wolf supporting them.
Yeah.
So they did try.
Yeah. So I mean, they got him on a TV show, which was fantastic. And yeah, I believe he did go on tour with them as well. But I just think they could have done more.
Yeah, I'm with you, Karlyn. I think like that when I looked at the lyrics, because I hadn't heard this song in a while, and yeah, it's interesting you say that you prefer it, Fran. I definitely still prefer Satisfaction to this. I think this one is fine, whereas Satisfaction I actually kind of like. But I wrote, once again, interesting to see some Brits inspired by Black Americans, because I was thinking about the Dire Straits episode that we did, which is kind of like Brits pretending to be Americans, and that's exactly what this is. You know, it's like what is it? I howled at my ma in the driving rain. It's a gas, like, you know, it's really, you know, obviously they can be whatever character they want to be. And I read that this was called, going back to Rolling Stone magazine, ironically, they called it Supernatural Delta Blues by way of Swinging London. Okay, sure, but yeah, I do agree with you, Karlyn. I think it's the whole kind of inspiration appropriation thing, right? You know, like if you're being inspired by people, I think you should elevate them. And you know, it sounds like they did a bit. If you're saying, Fran, about the Howling Wolf story, but maybe not enough.
It's hard because I think listening to some documentaries as per usual, and the artists they were copying or being influenced by said it was good and bad. So obviously their names were being mentioned more, but it backfired because people would prefer to see white people play blues than black people, so they toured even less than before in the 60s because they now had Stones taking their place.
Yeah, this is the issue. Yeah,
but I think most of those artists are more anti-Led Zeppelin than the Rolling Stones, and a lot of those blues artists even sued Led Zeppelin even to this day. They're happy with Rolling Stones because I think the Rolling Stones did mention that they were, you know, copying and being influenced, but apparently Led Zeppelin didn't at all. And we'll mention them later on because they covered a song. But yeah, there's a black poet called Leroy Jones who said that in 1965, the only difference between Beatles, Stones, and the Minstrels was that the Minstrels never convinced anybody that they were black.
Wow. What a quote. That's amazing.
So, two sides to the coin there. But for me, I think the Stones did progress. And, they were like 18, 19-year-olds and very just excited to discover like this new music from America. And they would like...
Yeah, fair play to that. Yeah.
It's the same like in Japan, they were like excited by seeing English guys in makeup. It's like, oh, what is this exciting thing I've never heard of? So you can see why they went towards that. So to them, it's like the hippest thing in the world was playing like this music that no one in UK had heard before. So you can see why, being a teenager, they got excited and wanted to copy it. But yeah, obviously they weren't expecting that this could hurt those original acts' careers at the same time, I guess. But yeah, but they did try things later on. Like I said, their better stuff is things like Paint It Black and She's a Rainbow and Psychedelic, and they have tried new things. Then I think recently they've gone back to doing blues again. I think they did a cover album of blues tracks a couple of years ago as well. So Babs, I guess you're going to say that they may be overrated.
Yeah, I mean, I knew this playlist wasn't made to try and convince me otherwise, but yeah, I do still think they are. And I think it's really good that we're having these conversations. I think this kind of, we're three white people, it's good that this conversation is being had, because I think in the past probably people would have been quite defensive and seen oh, but they're bringing the music to a wider audience, and it's a bit more nuanced than that. But yeah, away from the social theory, musically, I can appreciate the fact that they've been going for so long and that they did expand into other areas. And yeah, Angie is from when, the 90s?
No,
I don't even know.
I think it's like 72 or something.
Oh really? Okay. I feel, was it in a film?
I think their last like top 10 hit was Start Me Up, which was like 1980.
Okay, wow. Then yeah, my timing's way off. But yeah, I do think if they're generally overrated, but in blues especially from this playlist.
Karlyn, are they overrated for you or
100% overrated?
Shocker.
Yeah, they're rock and roll artists. They've contributed to rock and roll, but they certainly didn't invent it.
Would you say that they're the worst of those 60s bands for stealing, or?
Say that again. Sorry.
Do you think that they were the worst of those 60 bands for stealing from the American artists, or are Led Zeppelin worse? Or
so we're going to talk about Zeppelin when we talk about Memphis Minnie, definitely, because they went on to cover one of her biggest hits. Zeppelin did exactly the same, just with heavier guitars. And the Beatles, there's a parallel story there with like Motown and R&B as well. Yeah, I don't know who the worst offender is, but they're all offenders.
But yeah, I guess people have always been influenced by other countries and other artists. I guess it's hard to work out if you're stealing or just trying to push music forward. Maybe I think
it's quite ironic because I had a conversation about this with my clients today, like my work clients, because one of them lived. I'm trying to try not to name. One of them lived in a country where you could wear traditional outfits to work, and he was like, "I did, but I was like, am I culturally appropriating?" And I was like, well, if you're working in the place and everyone around you is working in that place, I think that's fine. The difference would be if you then just started up a fashion line and were like, hey, let's produce all of these, and didn't use any designers from that place. I think that's the line, isn't it? Because it's like, of course you're going to be inspired by fashion, music, art, but it's when you start kind of profiting off that and not bringing in the people who created it that's the problem.
I agree. So the Rolling Stones, overrated. Sorry guys, you better retire. Sorry.
So harsh.
I'll send you the facts.
The facts!
I've seen that on facts still. It's the Rolling Stones.
I'm sure they're on everything, but I mean, I'm sure they're also on TikTok. Of
course.
I have no
Please.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Actually,
there
I'm going to
must
look
be
that up right now.
Mick Jagger,
Rolling Stones TikTok.
Mick Jagger, in some shorts doing his dance routine on TikTok. It must happen.
Hey, podcast lovers. Now available. A new podcast experience featuring exclusive miniseries like Food Faves, and all new series that takes a fun look at everyone's real first true love, food. Milky Way Marvels, a lighthearted astronomy series where we explore the fascinating wonders of our galaxy. pop culture icons, an entertaining, nostalgic look back at various nouns in popular culture, plus more. Relax, enjoy, listen, laugh, and maybe even learn. Podcast, presented by Sonic Embassy. Now streaming everywhere you listen.
Access quick links to your favorite places to listen now at solo.to/Sonic Embassy.
Underrated.
And from TikTok to, would you describe her as traditional blues? I don't know what the official term is.
Oh yeah, for sure. She's definitely an OG of blues.
So yeah, so tell us more about your underrated pick, please.
Okay, so Memphis Minnie was born in the late 1800s, yeah. And she started touring. She came from poverty, and she was in the South. People were not treated well, and she was working on a farm, but just got a guitar. I think it was around aged 11. And just started spending all her time playing the guitar. So then she went out and started playing shows. At the time, people of colour were, of course, kind of restricted on where they could tour and play. And she really honed her craft in brothels.
Yeah, she was a sex worker as well.
And she was a sex worker, yeah. So she was, a kind of veteran of that scene. And then finally got picked up by Columbia a little later on. And in terms of like guitar, in terms of like composition, performance, persona, stagecraft, I really think she had it all, and she is so underrated.
Babs, had you ever heard of her before?
So yeah, I had never heard of her before. So I wondered if it would be like a nice contrast to the Rolling Stones of these. This is one of the slightly forgotten people that we should know more about, because I know, for example, like my blues knowledge is limited, but I know that Lead Belly was a big influence for Nirvana. The Big Mama Thornton, who is so forgotten, and she was like, she dressed in men's clothes and was openly queer. And I wondered if this was someone else in that category, and it does seem to be. Yeah, she from doing the research, it was quite funny to see how she was described. So Minnie was known as a polished professional and an independent woman who knew how to take care of herself. She presented herself to the public as being feminine and ladylike, but she was aggressive when she needed to be and was not shy when it came to fighting. According to the blues musician Johnny Shines, any men fall with her, she'd go for them right away. She didn't take no foolishness off them. Guitar, pocket knife, pistol, anything she'd get her hand on, she'd use it. And I was like, wow, that is amazing. Firstly, I think this is the first podcast where this is the oldest songs we've ever had on the podcast, because even for the Rolling Stones, all our songs are before 71, and that's quite rare. But yeah, to listen to these songs and to see the years that they were composed, almost 100 years ago was amazing, and the playing was incredible. So yeah, very, very keen to get into the playlist, and very glad to be introduced to Memphis Minnie. Thank you, Karlyn.
I used to work in music stores, Karlyn, so occasionally when I was filling up the blues section, I would see an album with her name on, but I couldn't name one song, to be fair. But what I find interesting is how do they actually know who wrote these recordings? Because doing a bit of research, it sounds like even back then, blues artists were covering blues artists who were covering blues artists. Yeah. So I wonder how who actually originally recorded it, and they're saying that even in those days, blues artists were still fucking over blues artists from 10 years ago by stealing their songs.
Yeah, such a good point. Yeah, I would say, so, I mean, kind of in her very, very early days, she wouldn't have had access to recording equipment at all, because it was still very, elemental. But then when she did get to record, I mean, everything, it was just kind of sheet music. That was the only way they could kind of copyright, but of course they didn't have PRS or anything like that. So it was just whoever put their name on the sheet music ultimately. And she undoubtedly would have taken from songs that she'd heard growing up, and maybe at church and things like that as well. Yeah. I
saw the film randomly, this is the prior episode. I watched Death on the Nile last month. Oh yeah. And in that they have a black blues artist looking quite sexy, and I wonder if they're borrowing her look from Memphis Minnie.
So the thing with like that kind of early blues is that because of the way that the world was, people didn't want to see black men up there. Like they found them like intimidating. They thought they were dangerous. And even I'm sure you've heard about when Leadbelly got kind of noticed, and they made him wear like a prison uniform because that was the image. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Whereas the women of blues, so Memphis Minnie, Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith, they were encouraged to dress up, you know, like glamorous kind of showgirls, and that was more palatable for the potential white audiences. Like that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. So then, Karlyn, let's get into it. What's the first song on your playlist?
Great. So it's Black Cat Blues, which is so on brand for me. So yeah, I present a podcast all about music and magic and spirituality. And of course, the black cat is held up as a good symbol of that in folklore. And I just think this song is very early recording techniques. Her voice is off the scale. An interesting fact, the kind of early recording technology was really suitable for women with big kind of voices, because anything really quiet or anything, it wouldn't pick anything up. It wasn't like now when everyone's auto-tuned, you know. Yeah, and it's about she gets a cat and he catches all the rats, keeps the area clean, but then everybody wants them, and it's definitely like a metaphor for like a relationship for sure, as most of her songs are.
When I first heard this, I thought, yeah, this is exactly what I imagined she would sound. She would sound like, even like the basic sort of like thumping drums, and the little solos happening. But yeah, this is, if I closed my eyes and thought of traditional blues, this is what I thought about. Even talking about a black cat seemed very fitting. Although as a rat owner, I'm distraught.
Do you have pet rats?
I have 2 pet rats, so you know.
Yeah, but they're not eating the walls in your house or whatever it is that the lyrics say, right? So
yeah, this is exactly what I imagined she would sound like. So it's a good introduction.
So
perhaps.
yeah, Karlyn, as a fellow cat lover, I love this, and yeah, love the double entendre of, you know, she's not going to give her cat away to just anyone, which was very nice. And actually, this wasn't what I expected her to sound like. I think because I was a bit scared because it was blues and I'm not really into it, I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would, and I think it's because of her voice. I think her voice comes across really strongly in this, even though it's a recording from 1937. And I really enjoyed the melody line of her singing, and it made me think, this isn't just your average blues song. So I thought, hooray! Yeah, this is my kind of blues, I think. And yeah, Karlyn, you mentioned this other song called "If You See My Rooster Brackets, Please Run Him Home," which is one of the best titles. And I was thinking, like, I know, if she was alive today, like, would she do like Patreon requests of animal themed albums? Because I would absolutely pay for that. I really enjoy her singing about animals. You know, I'm not a rat hater, Fran, but I'm, let's say, a bit more indifferent to rats.
I thought she may have done a cover of Wet Ass Pussy. That would be. Yeah. Like the modern equivalent, surely.
Imagine. That would be incredible.
But with like an old blues solo halfway through. So next track, Karlyn.
Sure. So when the levee breaks, what a song! So you might have heard this song played by Led Zeppelin. The original was written by her and her then husband at that point. So yeah, it's all about the southern states. They do flood quite a lot, and they're saying, no, these people are going to lose their home, no one's going to care. The delivery is by like the man, her husband, on this particular recording, and it's quite sort of like every day, you know, he's quite conversational about it. And for me, that makes me think, wow, like this happened to them all the time, and people did lose their homes and their livelihood, and no one really cared, you know. And then we saw it again with like Hurricane Katrina, when there wasn't really much sort of provision given for people, because it was this kind of blasé, it just happens all the time. It's like, you know, my dad was in Nashville and there was a hurricane, and they just sort of go right and shut the door, and that's it. You know?
I didn't know this was about a real incident. I thought this was like her discussing how hard life is. You got to keep building, and you got to keep getting past all of the floods and all of the rain. I didn't realise this actually was about an actual Mississippi flood.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know if you remember, but like in the 80s and 90s at the cinema, there was always like a whiskey advert when they'd be having like a blues night and there's a big storm outside, and then the guy goes, "The storm's finished," and they will go, "Oh no, but it's still raining," and then they start playing blues again. And I've been searching YouTube for that all day, and it's like, am I the only person who remembers this advert? Do you remember this advert, Karlyn? No, or
no? Yes, yeah.
It must be like some sort of whiskey, but. And as soon as I heard this, I kept thinking about that advert. So if you are listening at home, guys, please send me a link. I haven't gone absolutely mad. But
email us. We'll give you the details at the end.
I hadn't heard the Led Zeppelin song, but it's quite different. It's like two.
How? What? Where have you been?
I'm not a Led Zeppelin fan. They're more overrated than the Rolling Stones.
I disagree, and I think we need to discuss this on a future episode. Okay.
But yeah, I never heard it, but it's quite different, isn't it? It's like twice as long with like kind of different lyrics and everything. But I know that people do hate them for covering that song. Because I wonder, does the money trickle down to her family at all?
It'll trickle down, to her estate. If she's named as a writer on it, and that's really important that that's in place, because things like, if we're going to go back to the Rolling Stones, the whole Bittersweet Symphony fiasco, where the OGs didn't get a penny for that, but the Stones got a lot of pennies.
And they need the money.
Yeah, they're pure souls.
So yeah, I only knew the Led Zeppelin version. I mean, I knew it was a cover, but I'd never made the effort to come and listen to it, and I was really surprised how different it was. I really enjoyed the very complex guitar playing, because while I really like When the Levee Breaks by Led Zeppelin. It's one of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs. This is very different, and yeah, I feel like both are good. Both are, you get something completely different from them. But yeah, definitely many be like, so maybe Led Zeppelin are not as innovative as I thought they were, especially given how complex the guitar playing is.
So is it quite a big hit for Led Zeppelin?
I don't know.
No.
Because so me with Led Zeppelin, they're not one of those bands where I've listened to like every record. I got the greatest hits, the earlier ones, and got into them a little bit through that. So it's on one of the, I'm guessing, the latter. But yeah, Karlyn, do you like the Led Zeppelin version at all?
I do like it. Yeah, I think that they're fantastic musicians, and I mean his voice on it is amazing. Yeah. So kudos on that. But again, it's a little bit annoying that people think that they wrote it.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a bit like the Zootons with
Valerie. Valerie, yeah.
They must hate it when they go on X Factor and go, "I'm gonna sing Valerie by Amy Winehouse." And no.
But yeah, my dad, who is not a YouTuber at all, he sent me a 10-15 minute long video recently of like songs that you didn't know, a cover version, and there really is a lot of that. But again, there's a difference between a cover version and like a ripoff. And Valerie, I mean, again, it's two different songs. I enjoy both of them. I think I actually like the Zootons version a bit more. I imagine you might do, Fran, because you don't like the horns. As we know, as it's a recent discovery. We only discovered this when we recorded our Stranglers episode, Karlyn.
I like some horns, I like the sax solo in Rio.
Okay. Do you like Baker Street?
No.
I see. I quite like Baker Street. But anyway, we're going off on a tangent. I'm sorry. But yeah, I was really glad to listen to this original and see where it came from. Definitely.
And your next pick, Karlyn?
Yeah. So Kissing in the Dark. What a song.
Ooh.
So, I mean, she used so much kind of double entendre, and it's kind of all a bit cheeky. But yeah, so she talks about, I need to go to the doctor because I've been kissing in the dark. So we can, we can kind of infer that this is maybe about STDs.
Yeah.
STDs in the 1930s is not something I want to bring.
She was.
Hey, we need to talk about it every decade.
Yeah, she honed her craft in brothels.
Yeah.
That was her training ground. And yeah, just openly telling us that. I guess people who were in that circle would really know what it was about, but maybe others wouldn't.
I mean, kissing in the dark makes it sound like, it's sex, but we're just calling it kissing. But yeah, when you think about, I think, going back to the Rolling Stones, didn't they have a song called Let's Spend the Night Together? And that was already like, whoa. Yeah. And that was 30 years later. So this is much more out there.
But do you know how people heard this? Was this played on the radio, these tracks, or was it just in the clubs, do you know?
So she was signed to Columbia, and they had a branch called Race Records, purely for black artists.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, so it wouldn't have been on the mainstream.
Okay, so maybe she could get away with having a bit more risky lyrics if it wasn't, on the main stations back in those days.
On What's Be United, 105, yeah.
Totally. But then one of the kind of pro Stones things is that maybe they brought attention to these kind of forgotten records. When people heard that, they were like, I'm going to dig out the OG stuff. So yeah, it's
quite a different sound to the other songs. It's got piano on it. It's got percussion, and you could probably dance to this as well. It's one of the sort of songs I can imagine this being in a late night club.
Yeah.
But also, do you know why are so many blues people from that era called Muddy, Little, Baby, Kid? Why did they have nicknames? Do they have arrived with nicknames?
I don't really know where that comes from. I mean, Minnie, her name was Elizabeth. So Elizabeth Douglas. So Douglas is Scottish, so I like to think there's maybe a Scottish connection there. But Memphis being the home of blues, she wanted to be associated with that. It was a good stage name. She did play there regularly in Beale Street, but she was from New Orleans.
I don't think Paul Peter would really work for me.
Yeah.
Or Peterborough Peter or something like that. Yeah, that's not the same ring.
So, Russell's Babs. Are you a fan?
Actually, so the lyrics, yes, I absolutely love the lyrics. I loved reading about her girlfriend from Alabama who put all her pennies in a jam. But musically, I think it was my least favourite from the playlist because I'm not a big fan of the piano, actually, which is strange. Yes, I am slightly allergic to piano when it's a bit melodic, as discussed in previous episodes. But I don't know. I think because of the two songs we've heard so far, her voice is what really makes me like her more than anything else, even though I can appreciate the playing. It doesn't come across as strongly here. So listen, love to hear about STDs in the 50s. Actually, I think this is from 53. Oh, wow. But yeah, less piano, more STDs, less piano, please.
Yeah, I really struggled to find out dates and who recorded it, who wrote it.
I went on Discogs basically, Discogs, and I put that they're all singles. I'm sure there's a million different compilations, but it was when was the song released? So according to Discogs, 1953.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Your next track, Karlyn?
Cool. So the next track is Ma Rainey, after the woman herself. So have you seen the Ma Rainey's Black Bottom?
I have.
Yeah, what did you think of that?
I really loved it. I didn't know anything about Ma Rainey beforehand. It was an incredibly claustrophobic film, but the atmosphere created and the music was fantastic, I thought.
Yeah. So she's another OG, and it's just great because Minnie's really paying tribute to her and saying I really miss you. I'm going to carry on your legacy, and just paying tribute to her inspiration, which, as we've kind of noted on this podcast, is quite important.
Yeah, it's kind of nice, you don't have Britney Spears singing about Christina Aguilera, do you, already?
Yeah, I was thinking just that. I was like, Dua Lipa about Miley Cyrus, so I've updated it a little bit to this decade, but yes.
I enjoyed the Jordan guitars, but my only issue, I think, with the genre blues is that I'm a big fan of top melody. And there's not a lot of top melody in blues. Yeah, I had never heard of Ma Rainey, and then when I did my research, I then discovered that, that's the film that came out with Viola Davis a couple of years ago, so I should probably watch that as well.
Yeah, I mean, Viola Davis is astounding, and if Ma Rainey was really like that, wow. So You will see. She takes absolutely zero shit. It's amazing to see. But yeah, I prefer this one to Kissing in the Dark, even though it's still more traditionally bluesy. And like you were saying, Karlyn, like I think it's just so nice to be like, I really appreciate this person and I'm going to sing about them. Like, you know, given, you know, rap star beefs and rock guys slagging each other off in the music press, this is I much prefer this. Yeah. You know, I would much prefer a bit more of this rather than diss tracks. And I really enjoyed her heartfelt humming. I don't know, like I really felt it, but I wondered, Fran, if you were like, well, it's not lyrics, so I don't like it.
Hey, I don't mind a bit of
Yeah,
I even own the Crash Test Dummies on tape single.
Oh, there we go.
I guess in those days the artists had to be more of an army, I guess, because they couldn't have had much support. So I guess, you know, there would have to be like sisters fighting against, you know, the world in many ways.
Yes, because I mean, Karlyn mentioned her second husband, and apparently the reason they broke up was because he was threatened by her success. So, you know, yeah, sisters need to band together.
And your final track.
Yeah, so the final one is Hoodoo Lady, which is Black Cat Blues might be my favourite, but Hoodoo Lady's got a special place in my heart. I think it's a really interesting depiction of something that was and kind of still is quite common in the South, hoodoo as a practice of self-empowerment, a kind of magic. And she's talking about her encounter with a woman, a hoodoo lady. I mean, the people would have went to like a hoodoo person for all sorts of things like money, love, success, whatever it is. But Minnie sounds kind of like in awe of her a little bit, but also like, don't give me any shit. You know, don't play any tricks on me. So she's got that kind of street savviness about her.
Is hoodoo similar to voodoo, or does this just rhymes?
Yeah, so voodoo is more of like an actual belief system, whereas hoodoo is just a practice where they would use things like plants and that for spells, really. Yeah.
I stupidly put down on my list Hoodie Lady, which is a very different song.
Especially for Memphis Minnie, who by all accounts was very glamorous.
This was my favourite of the five. Yeah. Again, I like her asides, like, you know, like when she mentions, they say that it might be about Aunt Caroline Dye, they reckon there's a person talking about, but like, yeah, how her side saying, I'm scared of her, that sort of thing. At Magic. So yeah, this was my favourite track of the lot. Babs, are you a fan of the Hoodoo Lady?
I was a fan. I think I felt very similarly to Ma Rainey of like, okay, this is more traditional bluesy, so it didn't grab me as much as Black Cat Blues or When the Levee Breaks, but yeah, I still enjoyed it, and I wondered what on earth it was about, so thank you for breaking it down, because I'd never heard of hoodoo, and actually I thought it was about her being a sex worker. Because I don't know, hoodoo, because like I guess it sounds like hoochie or something. That's the connection I made in mind, which is entirely wrong. So I was like, and she also, you know, she talks about getting in and getting all that clothes, bring my man back home but don't let him stay all night. So yeah, it wasn't clear. So yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Is this a genre that mentions witchcraft more than any other era apart from, well, I guess goth might, but
yeah, for sure. Like Muddy Waters is referred to hoodoo quite a lot.
The devils, I guess, like
Robert Johnson, of course, famous Devil at the Crossroads. Yeah.
So, Babs, listening to these tracks, is Memphis Minnie over or underrated?
Absolutely she is. I'd never heard of her. I liked a few of the songs, despite it not being a genre that I'm automatically inclined to. And yeah, she wrote over 200 songs or something like that, they reckon. I think there's something there for everyone. You know, it's clearly not just traditional 12-bar blues and singing about feeling sad, you know, and as much as we normally don't pay attention to lyrics, Fran, like I really enjoyed the variety and breadth of topics covered in this small thing, where it's like, even when you're talking about a flood or hoodoo, you know, there's some, you know, double entendres and other things going on. So no, 100% underrated.
And I think, yeah, musically this isn't my kind of thing, and I can't imagine myself going back to it. But legacy-wise, it seems quite sad that, you know, I know Muddy Waters and Led Belly and, you know, Robert Johnson, but I've never heard of her, and why is that, you know? And maybe some of these bands, like the Stones, should have maybe mentioned some of the other people apart from the same ones, you know. So I feel like she's maybe been lost. Maybe because if you're a blues fan, maybe you instantly know who she is. I know like Bonnie Raitt is a fan. I think she got her a tombstone in the mid-90s. But yeah, she was not on my radar at all. So thank you for introducing me to her.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's interesting you say you don't know if you'll go back to her. I think I will, but I just think, like with a lot of genres, you have to be in the mood. You have to be, and it was funny because I prepared for this podcast, and then I went off and did stuff around the house and just left it on and wandered around, and I was like, this is really giving my house a different kind of atmosphere. Yeah. I was like, I feel like I'm in the park. It's just like, you know, I'm there, I don't know, like hanging up my laundry and stuff, and there's this woman singing, wah, and I was like, it's definitely creating an atmosphere that and the music I usually listen to doesn't. So I think when I'm in that mood, I will go back to it.
Does Jack White mention this sort of era at all?
Yeah. So Jack White is really into this kind of thing. He lives in Nashville, so right next to Memphis. I'm probably going to be meeting Jack White in about 3 months as well.
Wow.
So I'm going to be sure to ask him for more tips and kind of where to go. Memphis Minnie's tombstone is in Memphis as well, so I'll probably go into Memphis and have a look at it. Yeah.
Oh, incredible. So for the podcast or for something else?
So I'm going to present some of my PhD research, which is on like record shops and women and the kind of intersection of the two. And it's a big conference called Making Vinyl, and Jack White is going to be one of the speakers. Yeah.
Is that because of Third Man, is it?
Yeah. So hopefully I'll get a little tour of Third Man.
Very exciting.
Get some free stuff.
I mean, tell us more about what you do, Karlyn, as well as your podcast, because you're a music lecturer. I read on your website.
That's right. Yeah. So I teach at BIM in London and Manchester. So I teach all this kind of music history stuff, genre studies, a bit of arts development stuff. And I'm also just at the end of a PhD on vinyl as a format and kind of what it signals nowadays at the University of Birmingham. And getting out to speak at panels and stuff like that has been great. That chapter was published by Routledge in a lovely big book, which you can buy at Walmart.
Nice. Yeah. What's the book called?
Other places. It's called The Handbook of Women's Work in Music. It's published by Routledge. So if you're affiliated with any like institutions or anything, get them to buy it because it's expensive.
You heard Karlyn. I mean, this is ticking all the boxes for me. I have to say, I was just looking. There's a book coming up called This Woman's Work.
Oh yeah.
Which I'm really looking forward to. I am a sucker. Like, I will read a book about a woman writing up music in any genre. I don't care. It can be like, you know, thrash metal or, you know, gabba. I really don't care. This sounds very much up my street. I will keep an eye out.
Are we going to mention that we're not vinyl people?
That was going to be my next question. Karlyn, how do you feel about CDs?
I've got hundreds of CDs, but I no longer have a CD player.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. As you can see, these are all my CDs.
It's really impressive. Yeah. Is that your preferred format?
It is, and I think for Fran as well. And we constantly complain that very often when records are available physically these days, it is only in vinyl. Although that I did read something that says that it might be on the up now. I think Discogs again were saying that they had a real rush in 2021. I think people are maybe realizing that music that's online might not be always available online, and some music is only available on CD. Yeah. And I definitely now more than ever, I'm like, if I like something, I buy it on CD immediately, because I'm like, who knows if Bandcamp will exist or something like that.
Although I bought 2 CDs this year, and both of them have come in just a plastic wallet, like not even any artwork. I thought it was a bit harsh. Like, if I want to have the same feeling as I did back in the day when you had a booklet or something, that's why I'm paying the money for you. If you're just giving me a CD and I get to download it from the internet, the reason I want to have physical music is so I can actually have a physical thing to look at. I put on Gay Dad recently.
Oh, great.
And but he had nothing on Spotify at all. And then the next day, by magic, Gay Dad's album appeared on Spotify. So I don't know if I have any powers. But
is there like someone tracking Gay Dad mentions on the internet?
It was the most random thing I've ever known in my life. I just put on Twitter. Gay Dad randomly got into them. Cannot believe they're not on Spotify. Then a day later, a guy linked me saying they are today. And I was like, what?
But I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but Tom Veck, who I love bringing up. So for ages, only one of his albums was on Spotify, and then he released a new album. And people were kind of writing to him on social media. He's not very active on there. And this guy was like, hey, I'm in Colombia, I think. It would be really great to get the first 2 albums on Spotify. And he was like, what? They're not on there. So I was like, I'll take my chance. And I was like, yes, I'm in Belgium and they're also not on there. So I think sometimes artists know, but sometimes artists don't know. So I would say if you have an artist whose music is not on Spotify, it's worth, reaching out to them. Maybe not the record label, but reaching out to them to let them know. Also, sometimes it's a geographical thing. There's stuff we've discovered, Fran, that's on UK Spotify, but not Belgian Spotify. So, yeah.
Is there still an issue with vinyl being delayed due to lack of oil?
Absolutely. For that reason, for Brexit reasons, COVID reasons slowed a lot of things down.
And Adele, right?
Adele. So when major artists, clog up the pressing plants, they get precedence over everyone else. So
I've had 2 artists cancel their tour because they had to wait for the release of the album before they went on tour. I guess it makes sense. You don't want to have a new album. I mean, no one's heard and then tour it. So so it is kind of destroying the music industry. Who knew?
Well, I mean, Fran, when we talked to Ben Hampson, he was saying that with AA Sessions, they were lucky because they already recorded enough songs in advance so they could get it in advance. But it still took months and months and months for them to. And that was last year we talked to him. So, yeah.
So if our listeners want to find you, how can they find you, Karlyn?
Sure. Instagram, I'm like Karlyn L. King, and Songs Are Spells podcast as well. We have a TikTok at Songs Are Spells podcast.
You're the first guest to promote their TikTok.
Oh, so fantastic.
Thank you for bringing this into the 2020s. Yeah.
I've also got a website. It's just karlynking.com, which I need to update.
I've seen quite a lot of your Instagram lives you do for the podcast.
Yeah, it's cool. So we had Jen Eugenio on there, who runs a pressing plant in West Virginia. So we had a good chat, and she's really into Black Sabbath. She would be great on this podcast.
Okay, you've heard us. Well, we'll get in touch. We'll get in touch and say that you recommended.
How did you first start linking like tarot and witchcraft to music?
So for me, it's always been there. I feel like I've always noticed it, but then I kind of had a look online, and I was like, no one's really like doing this. There's a gap in the market. And once you start speaking to artists, like some of them have been a bit like, oh, I'm a wee bit scared of this. And it's like, no, it's not about are you a witch? It's about things like, how do you manage your own well-being? How do you look after yourself? How do you, just go about life? And like the anchoress put it really well when she said that these are things that I've been taught in therapy. Things like gratitude journaling, meditation. Those are kind of spiritual practices, and for her that had been recommended by her therapist. And I mean, Dev from Idols thought he wasn't spiritual at all, and then we had a chat, and he was like, "Actually, I've been doing this all along." Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Yeah,
that's quite interesting. You reminded me of. Did you see what Issa Rae said about the music industry? So Issa Rae, who she's the creator of Insecure, the HBO show, and she's so she's in Hollywood, right? Not known for being the nicest place, but she says the music business industry is the worst I have come across. It's riddled with crooks and criminals.
Wow.
She said, I thought Hollywood was crazy. The music industry, it has to start all over again. There are lots of conflicts of interest, archaic mentalities, villains and criminals. It's an addiction industry, and I really feel for artists who need to get into it. So it's good that, Karlyn, you're providing kind of an outlet for people to talk about their problems and see what helps them, because it seems... I feel like stuff is barely coming to light on what really goes on in the music industry.
For sure. Yeah. The tip of the iceberg. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you are doing lecturing and you're talking to the next generation, is it bleak for them, or do they see a future? Obviously, being from the 90s, I grew up with like the music industry. You can become a millionaire and sell millions of albums, and now it's like you can have 1,000 streams and make 10 pence.
So, I have had those conversations, and I've basically said to them, it's down to one of you in this room to change that. Like, we're counting on you. Like, something's got to give. And they're like, oh, right.
No pressure.
I bet it can continue. It'd be a horrible thing if no one can make it as a job anymore, because I want to see bands touring the world. It's nice having local artists, but it's also great to experience a band from 1,000 million miles away, and bringing a whole new culture to you.
Yeah, although again, to bring it down a bit more, I only recently discovered about the issue with venues taking cuts of merch, and it's just like, musicians are fucked over enough. Like, do you really need to fuck them over more with this? I genuinely had no idea. I think it seems to me, I don't know if you'd agree, Karlyn, of like, it just seems difficult for it to be a full-time job in the same way. Like, it's difficult for it to be the only thing you do, right? Yeah,
so we teach that, like the portfolio career, all different, have different things under your belt.
Yeah. And I mean, bands, Blood Red Shoes have talked about this, of like, when you're a band, you're not just a band, you are a social media manager and like a shipping expert and XYZ ABC, and especially if you're just starting out. I don't know. I mean, I wonder, the role of labels really is I think the key, isn't it? Because I think on the one hand, the time that we live in, kind of anyone can put stuff out there and put it out to the world, but if you have a label that looks after you, that provides, for example, mental health services, which I think is becoming a bit more common, that can help you with the other stuff, then you can really thrive. So
more of that, please.
Fingers crossed. But yeah, thanks guys for listening, and we'll speak to you next time, and thanks again to Karlyn.
Thank you, it's been fantastic. Thanks.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Karlyn. Bye bye.
And thank you for getting to the end of the podcast. Thanks again to Karlyn for being a great guest, and check out all her work online and her new book. I have had a run-in with the Rolling Stones, a Rolling Stone. Back in 2007, I saw the Stones headline at Isle of Wight Festival. I had booked to get the last ferry back to the mainland, and then there was some commotion as we discovered that the ferry had been cancelled and there wouldn't be another one for another 2 hours. So we had all these families like being furious at the operators and demanding an explanation. And slowly it turned out that the Rolling Stones had commandeered the ferry because they wanted to leave earlier. And people were like, trying to call the BBC, making complaints. And then about 15 minutes later, loads of these like black limousines and vans started to drive towards us, and all these guys wearing like their Rolling Stones t-shirts were like booing as the Stones and the entourage drove on by, and I was just there with my then girlfriend, and the window of one of the cars went down, and Ronnie Wood leant over and went "fuck you" and put his finger up to my face. And I just looked at my girlfriend and beamed and said, "A stone has fallen at me, this is fucking amazing." And then the Stones got onto the ferry and they all jumped out of the cars and they were giving us the finger. And I thought, well, rock and roll. So please subscribe to this podcast, and you will be able to check out our future episodes. You can find us on social media. We are OU Music Pod on Twitter and Overrated Music Pod on Instagram. We hope you get to hear us again in the future. Goodbye.